you've gone on this interesting journey where you have had a great education in this country when it comes to training in hair and makeup, with a focus on makeup, but with a hair element too. You've cut your teeth in the professional world and experienced a whole range of hair textures along the way, to the point where you got to be at the head of a department in multiple films. But you're still saying the vast majority of people don't know how to deal with the vast majority, the range of hair textures. And so if you had a message to the industry, what would it be? How do you feel about that? The fact that, I mean, how do you feel about the wealth of knowledge that you were given and told was all you needed?
Yeah, well, I feel that definitely in training, it should be included in all hair courses or hairstyling courses, and makeup courses, including the range of skin tones and the range of different textured hair, all the textures. That should be included in the curriculum, and we should be able to not only get the knowledge but also practice when you're training, because that's where you have the possibility of making mistakes and then learning, and that's how you learn, by practice. So I think it should be included in all hair and makeup courses, have that element to it, not it being specialized subject, it being part of your basic training. So if you are teaching a period hairstyle, how would you achieve that style on different texture hair? Or would you do something slightly different in that era for a Black person or an Asian person? Would their hair be the same look but just executed differently, or would it be a completely different look? Because I think that is something that is not touched on enough in when you're learning period hairdressing. I myself have a few books on period hairdressing, and they are mainly focused on how to achieve the looks in European hair. And you're like, well, but what would Black people in the 20s, what was going on then?
Yeah, did they exist?
Because of course they existed. So what so you end up going to different sources to find your reference, but you don't get that how to achieve this look you have to kind of figure it out by yourself. And I feel like it should be included in the curriculum. Yeah. And then also, but then of course now, for the people that have already gone through training and are halfway through their careers, I just feel like people should just search for the knowledge. And that's, in the past week, that is what I've been seeing. To be honest with you, I have been I've seen a lot of people talking about it, how doing demos online and doing lives and courses and everything. And it feels like people have started to make a bit of a change on searching for knowledge, searching for courses and everything. So I feel like there is a change coming, but it took a while.
Absolutely. Why do you think they're doing it now?
Well, with the past week, Black Lives Matter movement, I think that this time around, it did get the attention of a lot of different industries on how big the problem is, not only with diversity in the workplace, diversity in film, diversity not only in front of cameras but also behind the cameras, And then because it's being talked about, not only in the Black community, I think people are starting to listen. Um, and that's my opinion on it. I think because it is a worldwide movement that happened all in once and came with a big wave, and everyone is talking about it. A lot of people were like, okay, wait a minute, I don't know that much, I should search for knowledge, because that's what I see, that's what I saw this past week happening. So I think that is a positive change that is happening, and I just hope that it carries on. I hope it more people get the education. And there are we talked about there are a lot of petitions online asking to include that on colleges and higher education courses. And I just hope that that is the case, and I hope that it does for people that are starting their training now, that they get educated, and that we have a new generation of hairstylists coming in that are capable of just doing everything that comes their way.
But it's not just that, is it? I mean, you can train people, but if fundamentally the industry is not employing individuals, hairstylists, whether they're trained or not, who have these skills, because you were able to source these people exist as well, without training, maybe with training, we don't know. It's probably very diverse. But why, I mean, from your experience as a hairstylist across multiple different jobs, characters that you needed to style, I mean, how many Black hairstylists did you come across?
Not a lot. That is conversation that I've had with a few colleagues. You go into a big job and you go to your crowd room, and there's a lot of people, a lot of artists, and then you have one or maybe two people of color, and that is a fact, and that has happened in multiple occasions. And in the beginning of my career, I myself am guilty of that, because when I first started, I didn't know a lot of people, and so when I would get a job, I would get someone that I knew, and the people that I knew were white, and so I would get white people in my jobs. And I always have conversations with friends and with people I work with about female diversity in the workplace, so having women in the workplace, and how, like, camera departments, sometimes you just see a sea of men and you don't see any woman. And I was having that conversation in a gender equality, but I was not part of the conversation in race equality. And then I started then asking for recommendations of Black hairstylists, or all of ethnicities. And I think now that I'm still in the beginning of my career. I've only been doing this for 5 years, and in the great scheme of things, that's not a lot. But I feel like now I'm in a point of my career that I know a lot more people, and I can make sure that I get more diverse teams, and that's something that I do, that I've been doing a lot more than in the beginning, and I think,
because it does, I mean, would you say it's fair to say it does fall to the head of departments to make these calls? If you're given that power to say, I create my team, when you are at least a head of one, you have that responsibility of having to ask these questions and say, you know, should I be doing this? Can I do this? And then making that happen, because people will trust you to make those calls. It is a responsibility, but I feel like the industry too often forgets about the person of color. They forget, they don't notice how white the rooms are. They don't notice how white the productions are. And because, like you say, you're not involved in the race equality conversations, it's also that they're never asked about this either. So it doesn't get spoken about, it never gets thought of, and therefore it never becomes a thinking point when you're creating a team. And I think that is, again, the issue with having such familiar faces at the table all the time. It just doesn't lend itself to diversity. Even if, as one MP put it, I think he said, diversity of thought is there, but it's not the same thing. It doesn't work like that.
How many black people are in the current cabinet?
There's a whole series of people from a black and minority ethnic background. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Home Secretary, to name but two. So
I'm just talking about blacks.
Actually...
Sorry, I'm talking about black people specifically, because I do think it's quite important not to lump everyone from non-white backgrounds together, because obviously Asian people, for example, face prejudice too, but it might be a different prejudice to that faced by black people. 62%, for example, of GCSE pupils from Indian backgrounds got a strong pass in English and maths, 27% to black Caribbean. You're 3 times as likely to be stopped and searched if you're black than if you're Asian. So that's why I was specifically asking about how many black people there are in the current cabinet.
Well, I think that Boris Johnson has got a very good record on this, and it brings people in and listens to a diversity of views. And it's diversity of thought that's the really important thing when you're taking those big decisions around the cabinet table.
So actually, are you saying then that people from black backgrounds shouldn't really worry that there isn't a single person from a black background at the current cabinet table because you have diversity of thought?
No, what I'm saying is that the cabinets, the governments that Boris Johnson leads are some of the most diverse in the history of this country.
No, that's no. No, but yeah, I agree 100%. I was having this conversation earlier today, in fact, of how people that don't have diversity in their lives, be it professional or personal, a lot, especially when we're talking about white people, a lot of times that's not even thought of, because the norm is being in a sea of white people. So for them, in their personal lives, in growing up or anything, that is not something that is even thought about. And that's where we need to change the narrative. That's something that I have been doing, especially over the past year, of looking around and thinking, what is my team? Who are the people that are working with me? Because I have a diverse group of friends. How can I transition my personal life into my professional life as well? And that's something that I've been committed to, just making my teams, when I have the power, making my teams more diverse.